cannot understand. This is my speech.
Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this special committee of the whole public meeting to order for Monday, April 14th. I see that we have quorum, and I do call this to order. So the first order of business is the adoption of the agenda. It has been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Ribiak, that the agenda for the April 14th special meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest. That is any conflicts of interest and the general nature thereof. Do any members have any conflicts of interest that they need to disclose at this time? There are none. Can that be so noted? Thank you. Now we'll begin the public meeting under the Planning Act. And I have some information here to share with those in the public. The Planning Act requires under Section 34 that Council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public of the proposed amendment to a zoning bylaw. This public meeting has been called to satisfy these requirements. Notice of this meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on March 21st. The notice provided information on the property and the proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw, which is numbered 1136, 1987, as amended. The planning staff has provided information on the application. However, we encourage any member of the public who may wish to offer comments to please come forward at the appropriate time. There is an attendance list at the table, and I saw a few of you signing that, so thank you very much, which we would ask all present to print their name and complete mailing address if they wish to be notified of the passage of amendment to the bylaw by council should this occur. If a person or public body decides to file an appeal of a decision made by council in respect to the proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw and does not make oral submission at a public meeting or does not make written submissions to the town of Pelham before the proposed amendment is adopted or refuted, the Ontario Municipal Board may dismiss all or part of that appeal. In closing, on behalf of council, we stress that at this point no decision has been made on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, and therefore any comments received this evening will be taken into account by council in our consideration. First item is the planning report, and I would ask our director of planning or the planning manager to give us an overview of that application. Ms. Smythe, will you be doing that?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, members of committee and council, and members of the public. I'm here on behalf of the planning staff to present the application to amend the zoning bylaw for the intent to permit a professional office on the subject lands. The subject lands affected by the bylaw are located on the south side of Highway 20 West, east of Maple Street, administratively known as 796 and 770 Highway 20 West. The western parcel, identified as 796 Highway 20, is currently utilized by Bromac Engineering and Construction, while the eastern subject parcel, identified as 770 Highway 20 West, is currently vacant. The subject parcels are surrounded by single detached residential dwellings. To the east, a commercial establishment to the north, Claire's Cycle and Sports, a closed gas station facility to the west, and rural residential, agricultural, and greenhouse operations to the south. To provide you with some context and a brief history of the parcel, I will inform you that the applicant leased 796 Highway 20 West for the purposes of the Bromac Engineering and Construction Office since June of 1987. And the applicant subsequently purchased the lands in 1988 and continued utilizing the space for the office use. The applicant purchased 770 Highway 20 West in 2002 and was never developed. The existing 1974 official plan designates the subject parcel as rural commercial, and the permitted uses include small-scale commercial and industrial uses, which serve the surrounding agricultural area and could include automobile service stations and restaurants. The new official plan, likely to become into effect by summer of this year, designates the parcel as specialty agricultural and Greenbelt Natural Heritage Overlay. Permitted uses in the specialty agricultural area include agricultural uses, single detached dwelling, bed and breakfast establishments, and retail commercial uses, which are accessory retail commercial uses on farm properties, although the use needs to be clearly associated with and located on a farm property. The retail component has a floor area of no more than 538 square feet, and that a minimum of 50% of that floor area of the retail component be dedicated for the sale of products produced or manufactured on the farm property. Permitted uses within the Greenbelt Natural Overlay are subject to those of the underlying land use designation, which that being the specialty agricultural area. The original town's bylaw number 279 in 1974 was amended by bylaw number 450 1978, which applied to the agricultural zones and regulations dealing primarily with agricultural areas in the town. The bylaw designated a portion of the parcel as commercial rural, that being those lands identified 796 Highway 20, and the balance as agricultural A1. The CR for short, commercial rural, zone permitted uses such as automobile service stations, building supply sales, farm implement sales and service, feed and fertilizer dealers, animal hospitals contained in enclosed buildings, public garages, welding shops, public and private halls. In addition, residential uses were considered accessory to any permitted use. The A1 zone permitted agricultural uses including farm dwellings and greenhouses, one single detached dwelling, building structures accessory to those foregoing permitted uses. Professional office, in these circumstances, under the zoning 450, was professional office was not identified as a permitted use. In 1987, the town adopted the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 1136. Through this new bylaw, the subject parcel's boundaries remained the same, but were rezoned commercial rural and agricultural zone, where in the agricultural zone, additional uses were added. That pertained to seasonal and permanent farm help houses, home occupations, kennels, animal hospitals, uses and buildings accessory to that foregoing permitted use. In addition, forestry and conservation uses. Again, in this circumstance, professional office was not identified as permitted use in the bylaw. On November 4th in 2002, a bylaw was approved by town council to amend the zoning such that the balance of the lands that was zoned agricultural was changed to the CR zone. When considering a zoning amendment application, the following current planning legislation is considered to determine if the proposed amendment adheres to the policies and regulations. For instance, the subject parcels are located within the Greenbelt Plan area and are subject to the Greenbelt Plan policies. The subject parcels falls within the Greenbelt Specialty Crop area, tender fruit and grape lands. In addition, the subject parcels are further regulated by the Greenbelt Natural Heritage Overlay. The Natural Heritage System includes areas of protected countryside, which are areas that have the highest concentration and the most sensitive or significant natural features and functions. Specifically, Section Policy 3121 of the Greenbelt states that within the specialty crop areas, normal farm practices in full range of agricultural and agriculture-related and secondary uses are supported and permitted. Policy 451 states that all existing uses lawfully used for such purpose on the day before the Greenbelt Plan came into effect, that being December 16, 2004, are permitted. And under Section 5.1 of the Greenbelt, it states that all decisions on planning applications shall conform to the policies of the Greenbelt Plan. With reference to the 2005 provincial policy statement, this legislation states that primary agricultural areas shall be protected for the long-term use for agricultural. Specialty crop areas shall be given the highest priority for protection. Policy 2331 states that permitted uses are for agricultural uses and secondary uses from an agricultural area. Policy 2351 states that planning authorities may exclude land from primary agricultural areas for expansions or the identification of settlement areas, extractions of minerals, petroleum resources, or mineral aggregate resources, limited non-residential uses provided that the land does not compromise any of the specialty crop area, that there is a demonstration need within the planning horizon, and that the additional land to be designated to accommodate the proposed use, and that there's no reasonable alternative locations which avoid prime agricultural areas, and there are no reasonable alternative locations in prime agricultural areas with lower priority lands. Under the Places to Grow growth plan, it states that for lands within the Greenbelt Plan area, those policies regarding agriculture areas and natural heritage systems continue to apply. According to the Amendment 2-2009 of the Regional Policy Plan, the subject parcels are located within the unique agricultural area. The following policies are applicable for consideration of this application. Policy 6A1 indicates that the highest priority be given to preserving good tender fruit lands and good grape lands, that being classified under the unique agricultural area. Policy 6A6 states that a prominent use of the land will be for agricultural of all types, including livestock operations, compatible uses such as forestry and conservation. Policy 6A8 states that non-agricultural uses should not be located in agricultural areas, and that the new introduction of new non-agricultural development of all types shall be strictly limited. In accordance with the Planning Act requirements for public participation, a formal public notice was issued on March 21st, 2014, to all properties within 400 feet of the subject lands. In addition, a public notice poster was placed on the lands fronting Highway 20. During the 20-day notice period, 2 emails have been received. The comments including concerns over flooding and also what can be expected on the lands if this amendment is to be approved. A notice was also circulated to agencies both internally and externally on the proposed application on March 21st. To date, to summarize the comments received from the internal departments, the Public Works and Utilities has no objections on the amendment. The Building Department comments that the current use is being relocated, or comments that if the current use is being relocated, it'll be subject to, there is some subject to site plan control. The Fire Department has no objection to the proposed amending bylaw. With respect to comments from the external agencies, both the Region and Conservation Authority have not yet completed the review on some supplementary information that was provided. However, all comments received will be provided and included into the future recommendation report that will be provided for Council's consideration. So to conclude, the intent of the meeting tonight is to provide you and members of the public an opportunity to receive the information on this application and at no time to make any formal decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smythe, for your presentation. I wonder if members of council have any questions for Ms. Smythe at this time. I know there'll be an opportunity later on as well. No questions? Councilor Green?
Just one question, Mr. Mayor, through you. The business has been operating there since the 1980s. Was it legal non-conforming?
Ms. Smythe?
We don't have any proof right now that it's legal non-conforming. We may need to request the applicant to prove that it's been there prior to the or operating since 1987. But we don't have that information right now. So as it stands, it's been operating illegally.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions? All right, thank you. Now for the applicant to make their presentation. Maybe just state your name and...
Certainly. Good evening, members of council, Mr. Mayor and staff. My name is Patrick Maloney. I'm an associate lawyer, or excuse me, a junior partner with the law firm of Sullivan Manny. Mr. Tom Richardson is acting on behalf of our clients, John and Janice Clausen, who are here today. present in the body of the council chambers or committee chambers. As well, we have with us Mr. Robert Miller, who's the planner retained by our clients. I do have to send my, Mr. Richardson was intending to be here, but because of a situation, he wasn't able to make it. Before you, or most of you anyways, you should have a book of documents that we prepared today. It's very brief with four tabs, and I will be referring to it sporadically throughout my presentation. As Ms. Smythe indicated, we are seeking a zoning bylaw amendment to recognize the existing professional office used by Bromac Construction Engineering, Inc. Bromac is a long-standing corporate citizen within the town and has operated since 1988. So there's two actual purposes to the application. One is to allow the continued use of the subject lands for Mr. Clausen's business. Mr. Clausen wishes to continue his engineering consultation at this location. Otherwise, it is not a permitted use, which is sort of the answer to your question, Mr. Durley, that it was established in 1988. The zoning bylaw was approved by town council in 1987, not adopted, approved by council. It actually went to the Ontario Municipal Board, which took 4 years to actually get back to the town. And then, so ultimately it would be adopted in 1991. And I'll refer to that in a moment. So the application is also to allow the reconstruction of the professional offices on the subject lands. If I may direct your attention to tab number 1, which is a sketch for the rezoning purposes. To the left is the municipal address of 796 Highway 20. To the right is number 770 Highway 20 West. So 796 is the property to which the existing professional offices are being used. I would also note that there was a request put forth for a medical clinic. That's no longer a part of the application. The application is seeking to recognize the existing professional office use on the property. So you'll see the existing building, which is sort of, you see it in the background. There is a proposal to add a second story to that building, and there's existing parking on the property. You'll see a pond in the rear, which we'll refer to in a moment. On the right side, number 770 Highway 20 West, the proposed area is being used for parking and a filter bed. And you see to the south, there's this intermittent water course that leads into the pond and ultimately across Maple Street into an outlet on the other side. Of significance is this intermittent water course. It does flow through the property. I understand it flows more regularly in the spring, as in right now, but it can completely dry up in the summer. So that's one thing to take into consideration. I understand we did have a review from an environmental consultant who indicated that it was a former beaver dam. That's why there's a bunch of mixed wood and trees and that sort of thing in that area. If I may direct your attention to tab 2, this is an aerial photo we got from Niagara Navigator. I just wanted to indicate all the adjacent uses. So across the street is to the north is Highway 20, as well as Blair's. To the west is you'll see is the rural residential uses. So that's to the right of the photo. There's a bunch of residential rural uses. You'll see that little stream that goes through the 2 properties and 3 properties ultimately, and then into 770 Highway 20 West. To the south of the subject lands are again rural residential uses. To the east of the subject lands is Maple Street with a former gas station on the property. I just want to note of significance is that there are no agricultural uses abutting the subject lands. In fact, I would submit that these lands cannot be used for agricultural uses, which I'll get into in a moment. The lands, see the tree lot to the right, covering 764, 760, and I'm not sure what the address is, 750 something. That's a wood lot, which cannot be used for agricultural purposes as well. So in terms of the historical zoning, I did kind of give you an indication as to what it was. I think this property is a bit of an anomaly. The property is zoned as commercial rural with an extensive list of permitted uses, but it does not include professional offices. In fact, many of the uses that are permitted within the commercial rural zone would be considered probably more intense and less compatible with the rural area. The use has proven to be compatible with the existing area, as it's been there since 1988 for 26 years. The subject lands were zoned as commercial rural when the use began. The current bylaw, as I said, was passed in 1987, and it took 4 years to ultimately get approved. But between 1987 and 1991, there were a number of zoning amendments made with respect to various properties of which would form part of the existing zoning bylaw. And I understand that included a zoning across the street at Claire's, which permitted the use there. There has been various subsequent zoning bylaw amendments in the area, including those along Highway 20 that do actually recognize existing uses. In 2002, the easterly portion of the subject land, so what is known municipally as 770 Highway 20, was rezoned to commercial rural. I wanted to clarify, the property was not purchased in 2002. That property was actually purchased back when the first property was purchased. They were actually a couple months apart. It was, I understand from my client, it was purchased in March of 1988. So it wasn't purchased actually in 2002. So it's not like we purchased it subsequently and now we're trying to add it to the existing use. That land actually, it sits vacant in the sense that there's no building on it, but it has been used by our client for things such as storage and signage. There's actually an MTO entrance access point that's fully curbed onto the property. Unfortunately, none of the amendments that were made between 1987 and 91 and subsequent to 1991 up until today included the recognition of the use on the property. So unfortunately, like I said, it fell between 1987 when it was approved by council and in 91 when it was ultimately adopted by the board, Ontario Municipal Board, where typically right before it's adopted, you'd go through and make sure all the existing uses are zoned accordingly, but it wasn't done in this case. Overall, I would submit to you that this is an opportunity to correct a long-established use on the subject lands. So in terms of the planning policies, we have had an opportunity to review the town's planning report. At tab 3, I've included the report of Mr. Miller. I won't go through this in any detail. I want to present it to you for your consideration. I will summarize part of the planning justification that has been outlined by Mr. Miller. Despite the historical use with respect to we'll start from the top, provincial plan, policy plan, and policy statement, excuse me, and the Greenbelt plan. Despite the historical use on the property and the actual zoning, so zoning is rural commercial, the subject lands are designated as specialty crop area. And the focus on specialty crop areas are to keep the subject lands for agricultural purposes. This is probably a great example of where the province does a blanket designation as specialty crop area, when in fact it cannot be used for that. And there's no site-specific examination of what the use is. And that's where we get to this point where we can say this property it should not be considered a specialty crop area. With all respect, the aerial photo at tab 2 shows that, as I said, it will not be used for any sufficient agricultural operation, I should say. It is bound by Highway 20 and Maple Street. It is bound by residential uses. It is bound by the environmental conservation lands. There's a protected watercourse that flows through the subject lands. And collectively, it's about 3 acres that would not be sufficient for an independent agricultural operation. It doesn't abut any agricultural operations. So I would submit to you that the land does not comprise of a specialty crop area. Overall, it is the view of the applicant's planner that the application conforms to the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, and the Greenbelt plan. With respect to the regional policy plan, the site is similarly just blanket designated as a unique agricultural by virtue of the provincial documents. However, our planner has reviewed the policies within the provincial or the regional policy plan and has concluded that it conforms with that plan. With respect to the current OP, in terms of the official plan, the current OP, not the one that's hopefully to be approved by the board very soon, the subject lands are designated as this rural commercial. The rural commercial designation says that permitted uses shall generally be restricted to small-scale commercial and industrial uses which serve the agricultural area. I would submit to you that the use of the words generally arguably leaves the door open for additional uses, and ones that are such as this where they're compatible with the rural characteristic of the neighborhood. If one were to conclude that the use is not permitted based on that definition, there is a policy 1.4 that recognizes that where there are uses of lands that do not meet the policies, lands can still be zoned to allow the present use. There is a 5-part test, and that's at page 3 of Mr. Miller's planning report. And if you look through that 5-point test, I won't go through it specifically, but it's all about seeing whether the use is compatible. And I would submit to you that 26 years of use on the property as a professional office, it's my understanding that there are no issues with compatibility. So overall, if you look through the 5-point test and you consider it, it does meet the town's official plan. Our applicants, or the applicant's planner has reviewed that and has concluded objectively that it does meet the official plan in that case. With respect to the new official plan, it does designate a portion as specialty agricultural and the southerly portion as a natural heritage designation. The specialty agricultural has the same test as I indicated, which is on page 3 as well. It's the second part of page 3. Again, it's the focus of that test is to concentrate on compatibility. In terms of the characteristics of the neighborhood, I would submit that the use as a professional office is compatible with the area. With respect to the natural heritage issues, the applicant has retained Beacon Environmental, who did a field assessment of the property, and I provided that to you at tab number 4. The conclusions were interesting. Upon consideration of the buffering, the development of this 770 Highway 20 is limited. There's a buffer between the water course that goes to the property, notwithstanding the fact that it's dry for most of the year. But there is a setback. So there is some limitations as to what can actually be done with that property. The parking lot and the septic bed would fit within the area. Overall, it was the view of it is the view of the applicant's land use planner that the application conforms to both official plans. Overall, in consideration of all the different planning policies, it also is the applicant's conclusion that the application conforms to the provincial, regional, and local planning policy. Quite frankly, the simple thing we're trying to do is just rezone the property to recognize the existing use. It's compatible. While there are some issues with provincial policy, I think we can argue around those. So on that basis, we ask that you approve the application. There were 2 other issues that were presented in the planning report. One was a letter from the neighbors regarding complaints about the flooding of this watercourse. During the field assessment by Beacon Environmental, it was discovered that that swampy area, as I said, was an old beaver dam that continues to hold back the surface flow of the water. However, the designation of that property as environmental conservation area seriously limits our ability to do anything about that. And what my client promises is that he'll work with the town and with the neighbors, whether it's through the site plan process that would follow this rezoning, or just in terms of doing things within all the parameters of the law in remedying this. So we're certainly looking to fix the situation on upstream owners. The second clarification I wanted to make was there was a comment from Mr. Jennings, the chief building official. He's indicated that the current office use is being relocated. In fact, that's not actually the case. Mr. Clausen continues to intend to operate his engineering consulting business at this location. The construction part of the firm is actually moving to a different location in the town of Pelham, thankfully, but the engineering part of it will continue to operate at this location. So subject to any questions you may have, those are my submissions.
Thank you very much for your submission. I wonder if members of council have any questions for the applicant's representative. What was your name again, sir? I'm sorry.
Patrick Maloney.
Maloney, great. Patrick Maloney. Questions for members of council? Councillor Lane and then Councillor Kersey.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, how many people work out of this building?
I'm going to have to defer to my client. I'm not sure.
Four right now.
Mr. Mayor, 4.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And under this proposal to change this building and bring more commercial there, how many people would you anticipate would work out of this facility when it's finished?
Well, I don't know that there's a set amount, but it'll still be on a smaller scale. I can't give you an exact number because that'd be difficult to really tell you. But in terms of the rural characteristics of the neighborhood and just generally the desire to have a professional office there, I would submit that it's still relatively limited. You're not putting up a huge office use in agricultural area.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, what use is planned for the second floor?
Mr. Mayor, it'd be professional offices. all the way, fitting within the definition of professional offices. And you know, we can't say anything more because it would be fall within that definition.
So is it professional uses in relationship to the business that Mr. Clausen is currently in? His own employees, or is he planning on leasing that space out to other uses?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be predominantly used by his company at first, and as well if there were other professional office users, they would also move into that. You could have you know, a planning office. We have a planner here. Planners would need that sort of offices like that. Anything that fits within the definition of professional offices.
How does that meet?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, please.
The filter bed is very close, actually right on the boundary of the 30-meter setback from the wetlands. Have we had commentary, or have you had commentary from the MPCA with respect to this?
I know, through you, Mr. Mayor, excuse me, I know Beacon Environmental has considered the comments by Mr. Mallory of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. Unfortunately, we don't have their comments for tonight's meeting, but it's my understanding that it fits within the capabilities of the site.
As a follow-up, I assume that the MPCA then has also commented on the paved parking. Will it be paved, or will it just be gravel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be part of the site plan process. So it'll be, there'll be discussions with town planning staff as to how that will be dealt with. But it wouldn't be a requirement of the rezoning process. It certainly would be in consultation with planning staff.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councilor Rivak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think my question goes to the planner, if I may.
We could, let's do it after. I think this is just for the applicant now and his submission. Okay, thank you. Others? I have a couple of questions, Mr. Maloney. Your submission and the actual form the application we have before us shows that in 2002, the property 770 was added to that CR zone.
Yes.
And yet your submission, you also say that this proposal is to correct an historic issue. Why wasn't it corrected in 2002? Why was it accepted? I presume that the CR zone is the same wording as it was in 2002 as it is now. Why did your client not try to change it then and correct it then?
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may, the use at the time, there was actually a different proposed use made of the property, or proposed of the property, of a hardware facility. Unfortunately, the proprietor of that business backed out, and he was sick and not able to plant or to move forward with it. So that's why it was rezoned that way. But you know, since 1988, it was used as part of the Bromac business. It was, you know, they were going to operate a different type of use, which would have fit within the zoning, but that didn't happen.
Okay, thank you. The pond, do we know the source of the water of the pond? Is it that, as it's on the plan, the intermittent stream?
My understanding is just that this surface water that flows down the hill towards the property, and that's why, you know, during the spring it would be, as in days like today, it would flow more greatly, but ultimately that's where
So, Mr. Maloney, the intermittent water course, as outlined on the map, is the only source of water to that pond. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because then it flows across Maple Street in.
I drive by that pond every day and it's running. The only time it isn't running is when was I think 2 times this year when it was frozen. So I think it would be, anyways, it does run year long.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
I've often thought it'd be an interesting proposition to generate electricity off of that because so much water is running. No, quite literally, anyways.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding was dry last summer. And that's what we're saying intermittent. So it flows and then it dries up. Mr. Miller indicated that you could walk across it.
Okay.
And then I'll show you what it's like at the bottom. Several marks of the
Thank you, Mr.
backhoe
Clausen.
dug it.
Since Mr. Clausen is addressing council, I do have a vague memory, Mr. Clausen, of you, I believe it was in 2006, addressing concerns in the council chamber then about something about the pond, and it was around 2006. I wasn't on council, and I've asked a councilor colleague, I haven't asked the other that was sat around council, but there was nothing about
I never addressed anything, at all.
that pond, no?
No.
Okay. Thank you, well,
The only thing in the severe drought, my pond was the last one to drain, and the greenhouse guys were begging me to use the water. By the time they were ready to use the water, it was drained too, it dried up too.
okay, maybe that's what it was.
And what the greenhouse operators want is a source of water out there. So I told them, wanted to talk to the town and see if you can get a water line out there, because they need the water. You know, in a matter of a couple hours, you drain my pond.
Yeah.
So that's probably where that came from. They have in the summer, they have a real problem there. Ask Slappendale and a couple of the other guys.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Clausen, and thank you very much, Mr. Maloney, unless other members of council have questions for you. Thank you. Now we will open the floor for public input. Are there any members of the public that would like to address council? And if you wouldn't mind, for the record, if you would say your name and address, and we'll include that.
My name is Hendrika Bleierveld, or Ricky. And I have made up a letter and left it with Mrs. Pizzato. And requesting, as we read this proposal on rezoning, to ask Mr. Claassen, as he has equipment on the lot 770 anyway, could he have the natural waterway cleaned out better than what it is? There's not much water from our properties, the other two neighbors, to going through to the pond. And I know there's lots of water in the pond, but there could be more, because it's sitting in my backyard right now.
Okay.
Only one day, I said in the letter 2 days, but now that we had rain twice for 1 day, with 1 day, it overflows. And as well, it's not good for our septic system.
Right, to have that
And
water.
for, I forget where I mentioned it. Anyway, for the people that, my property maintenance people, and that summer when they mow the lawns, they can't get out there, they can't get past the waterway, and it makes it awfully hard on us.
Okay,
Long grass.
thank you.
Sorry for not being a better speaker.
No, I'm, that's not it at all. I'm trying to respond. Mr. Clausen is here. He's heard your appeal. And essentially it's to try to clean out that waterway. And Mr. Clausen, if you want to, go ahead, sir.
I want to do so. I already did something, to help the situation. But the problem I have is I gotta get the Conservation Authority and the Ministry of Natural Resources on board. The Conservation Authority wants me to move the stream south and make it deeper so I could float and go better. And the Natural Resources says leave it the way it is. Now, if I could have a group of people come with me to the Natural Resources and we strong arm them, I think maybe we can get the Conservation Authority deal and get it cleaned up. So when I'm building, I get the equipment there, I have no problem making sure that her property stays without water, plus the others. But I gotta get through and when I was gonna build that hardware store for Horton, I had an application into the Ministry of Natural Resources to do that. And then it got stopped when the whole thing died. But there's two different schools of thought.
Yeah.
And now, the Ministry of Natural Resources are even more sticky. But now, with Beacon
So-
having shown that it isn't a specialty area, I think we can get somewhere with the natural resources. So
I would encourage those that are interested in that to speak to Mr. Clausen and see if you can work together with the Conservation Authority and the Ministry of Natural Resources.
Could I ask a question here, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Mr. Clausen?
Well, I wonder if that's not specifically to this application.
Yes.
So
I'm
I
just-
would encourage you to speak to him offline, as they say.
Oh,
Okay?
well, it has to do with what he said just now.
Yeah. Is there anything further on this particular submission other than your concerns about the water there.
Okay,
Is there anything further?
I don't think so.
Okay, any questions from council? Thank you very much for your, thank you for your submission. Thank you. Other members of the public? Please, sir, come forward, and if you would mind, so we can see you a little bit closer, and state your name and address, please.
I'm Frank Schuster, 756 Highway, and I moved there about, I would say, 20 years ago. In that time, I had a lot of problems with the water, backing all up, and so then I had to install another culvert in the back, because the water actually is, so much is coming from the back and in the front. I got two culverts now. One is in the front and one is in the back. It used to come in the back up. This is how much water is coming from the greenhouses down. Okay, because I got 5 acres, and then the greenhouse sits on the other side, right? And I phoned the city, and a gentleman came out, and he looked at me, and he drove around, he looked at everything, and he said to me, well, it's not my problem. You gotta get Mr. Clausen? Okay. And that happened about 2 years ago back. This year we had another flood there. And, you know, I put up, when I moved there, I put up for 10 years, and then I put another culvert in the back. And it, anyway, so I have a bad time getting somebody there to do that work for me.
Thank you. Mr. CAO, in terms of the concerns of members of the public about the water course, what do you suggest in terms of a course of action? Is it to speak to Mr. Clausen and speak to the NPCA and the Ministry of Natural Resources, or is there another course of action that individuals can take?
We certainly could do that, Mr. Mayor, and maybe defer to,
I was
Clever?
told, oops, sorry, I was told by people from the conservation area that I have to keep everything clean, all the ditches, and that's what I did.
Okay.
And my next door neighbor had a flood, the other one had
I
a
see
flood
that.
there, and it came all the way on my side there.
I'm just going to ask, Mr. Schuster, I'm just going to ask staff, Mr. Glover, to comment.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, and I'm not a lawyer, my understanding of the law is there's something called riparian rights, and that's when the flow of a river or natural drainage of a property flows downhill, and you are permitted to flow that continuously downhill onto neighboring property. And this sounds like this is the case in this situation. However, there's also a provision where if you have a site and you put development, a house or asphalt on that site, you need to control that additional runoff onto your property before it's released. But in this case, it sounds like with the conservation and M&R, I'm not sure why M&R is involved, but M&R or Niagara Conservation, that is riparian rights is the issue here, which is a civil matter between landowners. So again, I suggest through you, Mr. Mayor, that you talk to the landowner, talk to the conservation, and it's probably correct that they're saying you have to keep your waterways clean because it needs to flow.
I am.
Right.
And it sounds like it's
I'm also
downstream,
getting-
it's not.
I'm also getting the water across the street too. There's a big culvert underneath the highway, and that's coming in my place too. So that's why I have to keep it clean, and I got clean the front and clean the back. And 2 years ago, okay, I approached the city,
Yeah.
they were out there, they looked at it and said, it's not my problem there. You know,
Okay, thank you. Perhaps it can be addressed
This is
in
how
some
I
way,
would-
Mr. Glover, in writing with this application
Okay,
or somehow.
we can deal with that in the report.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Schuster. Appreciate your presentation and your concerns about water on your property and how this application may affect it. Any other from members of the public that would like to speak? Going a second time? Going a third time, okay, so thank you very much for those that did address council, and it sounds like it's obviously a very important issue to you, and as staff indicated, they'll include some suggestions in the report of possible solutions for you or possible directions that you can go. I think that's it, Mr. Clausen. I'm now going to open it up to members of council, and I believe Councilor Ribbiak had a question, or you wanted to provide some input.
It's a question, really, just so I have straight in my mind where we go from here. Mr. Mayor, we're looking at a request for a rezoning. The use that the property is being put to now sounds arguably illegal, non-conforming. I guess a building was put up that would have been put to a conforming, to legal use, but due to circumstances, it was applied to a different use. So what happens if this request for rezoning is turned down? What happens to the continued use of that property? Does it continue illegally and we know about it and we avert our eyes, or just exactly where do we go from?
I think we probably prefer to say use the word non-conforming as opposed to illegal, but I think staff get the idea. Who wants to address that, Mr. Glover or Ms. Smythe? Mr. Glover?
So the use is operated, the applicant has said since 1988 or so. The bylaw came into force in 1987. It was appealed, but under Section 24.4 of the Planning Act, if something's appealed, the ruling, it comes into force the day after the passing of the bylaw, so it'd be 1987. So it'd be considered a non-conforming use at that time. It's continued to this point as a non-conforming use. There hasn't been a nuisance per se, because we would have reviewed that and investigated the property. So in that respect, there was no enforcement done because it wasn't a nuisance call. We are reactive instead of proactive in some cases where there's not a nuisance. So in this case, we would have to look at the property and see if there was a nuisance there, to see what the case may be in terms of our proactive nature on it.
And I think the councilor's question was, what would happen should this not go through? So either you can answer that now or have that in the report as well.
Hypothetically, if the application was not approved, it would be deemed an illegal use and it would not be permitted.
Okay, thank you. Does that help, Councillor?
It helps my understanding. I'm not sure it helps the issue.
All right, thank you. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, in my understanding of what Mr. Maloney said was that in fact the bylaw was not really put into effect until after an appeal, which was sometime after 1987. Am I correct in that assumption?
I think, Mr. Glover, can you help, please?
As I understood the applicant, and he can clarify if I misquote him, the use was not established till during the appeal period of the bylaw in 1987. The argument is that it was established during that appeal period, and the DLB made a decision, therefore the use should be permitted as a legal non-conforming use because it was there before the decision was made. But under the Section 24.4 of the Planning Act, the decision reverts back to the date after the passing, so therefore the zoning was established prior to the use, so therefore the use is a non-conforming use. That is clear.
Okay, so if the use was there the day before it was approved by council, it's okay?
That's correct. It would be a non-conforming use. That's not the case, though.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others? Questions or input? I think, I do have a question for staff, and I don't know if they can answer it now or include it in the report, but as was pointed out, and as council knows, the Ontario Municipal Board has our official plan currently, and is considering a consent motion, I guess, to approve that. And that was on March, whatever it was, 14th. Would the same standard apply, I guess? And I think it would be helpful to know, as this moves forward, where that is in relation to this application. Who can answer that? Ms. Smythe?
Sure, through to you, Mr. Mayor. So if I get this correct, with respect to the applicant's request for zoning amendment. Is it trying to be in compliance to the new official plan that has been approved and in front of the board to become forced into effect? So the policies, as you will, under specialty agricultural, under the new official plan, understanding that the parcel itself is not currently being utilized for agricultural purposes, there was an opportunity when the official plan, through redesignation of the lands, there was the opportunity for all members of public to identify concerns of redesignation of those lands. There was no discussion at that time for the redesignation of those lands. So essentially, all applications should be coming forward to be in compliance to the designation of those lands. And in this circumstance, it doesn't seem to be the case. But again, the green belt applies policies across the board that may not be applicable in certain circumstances. This may be one. However, what needs to be noted is that the use is currently illegal. And so what we're trying to do is recognize the use that's been there. And that's pretty much
Okay.
the intent. So really, the intent is, when you zone, you're trying to implement what the designation allows for of those lands.
Okay, thank you, and I think as, to use Councillor Rubiak's language, that helps with my understanding of the, I'll say, of the problem or the challenge. Okay, thank you very much. Any further, Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our planning staff. Bring some clarity here. I'm a bit confused. When Mr. Maloney made his presentation, he said that they're asking for a rezoning to recognize the existing use. So would the zoning bylaw amendment be very specific and state that it would be for engineering offices only, thereby recognizing the existing uses, or would it be broader in the sense of being for professional offices? Because we've heard that there is an expansion of the building and may, over time, evolve into being a rental property for other professional uses.
Thank you for the question. Who wants to? Ms.
Through
Mike?
you, Mr. Mayor. In recognition of the application being for a professional office, it does somewhat leave a broader definition. However, it's not to say that through the zoning amendment, we can't put some sort of restrictions on that. Understanding maybe fully what the intended use for the second floor, understanding what would be the maximum number of parking spots, for instance. How does that stormwater management? So all of these things could likely be identified through the regulations on this specific site.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Others? Okay. Councillor Rubiak for a quick last time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know how quick it's going to be, but we are contemplating a zoning bylaw change to base zoning on built form. If we had such a bylaw in place now, would we still have this issue? Or would this be defined
Glover?
differently?
Who wants to
Through
answer?
you,
Ms.
Mr.
Mike?
Mayor, just like we did in 1987, there was the comprehensive zoning bylaw. So essentially, you go through, see what built form is there, identify it, and recognize that in the bylaw. Same would be the said as the exercise we're going to be undertaking in the next year or so, is going through the land uses in built form, identifying them, recognizing them, and seeing if they conform to the official plan designation. And if not, there may be some exemptions applied in those circumstances. So this could very likely have undertaken that course of action. We've identified that opportunity, however, it was decided upon the applicant to proceed at this moment.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Glover wants to add to that?
Just for the clarification, The use under there are permitted uses in the CR zone that are permitted on that site, professional office not being one of them. However, the contractor's yard, there are other uses that we would have perceived this use to be. So it wasn't that it was an illegal use that we just didn't enforce, that we perceived it to be a different use. Now that it's come to light that it may be a use that's not permitted, when we look at the comprehensive zoning bylaw, we'll consider that when we look at that.
Okay, thank you. So the specific and the general answer. Thank you for that. Councillor Drilling?
My question has been answered.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any others? All right. Thank you all. We now have a series of motions here. The first is moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Lane, that the Committee of the Whole receives the issue sheet report for information as it pertains to the application file AM 0314 for the subject parcels located at 770 and 796 Highway 20 West. And further, that committee directs planning staff to prepare a recommendation report and necessary amending zoning bylaw, should that be required, and present it to council for approval or for consideration at a subsequent council meeting. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey. The correspondence received at the public meeting held on April 14th regarding the application for zoning bylaw amendment be received for information of committee and referred to the Director of Planning and Development Services as follows. The submission by the applicant. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And the final motion, moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Papp, the special meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned until the next regular committee scheduled for Tuesday, April 22nd, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. This public meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your participation.
That's exactly right. Exactly.
Pretty strong.
I know you just like.
All right.
Good evening, members of council. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular Committee of the Whole meeting, which has been postponed from our meeting on the 7th to now. And it has been moved by Councillor Lane, second by Councillor Kersey, that the agenda for this regular meeting of Committee of the Whole, which was rescheduled till tonight, be adopted. Are there any changes to the agenda? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we defer item 5.6.1, LCBO land acquisition, to our meeting on the 22nd, please.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Papp? You, yeah. It's probably better to do so. And to that amendment, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. So that will be deferred till then. Postponed, as they say. And see, there was another item. Do you want to get to that item and do it then, or do you want to do it now? The development charges? Or is that on council?
I was just gonna report when it came up.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, we'll do that. Any further changes to the agenda? There being none, I call the question on the amended agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item is disclosure, thank you, of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Do any members have any pecuniary interest they need to disclose at this time? Can that be so noted, please? Next is department reports. First are many reports under corporate services. It has been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Lane. The Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the 2014 first quarter revenue and expenditure report be received for information. Any discussion regarding that? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item has been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Kersey. The Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the 2014 first quarter capital project update report be received for information. Any discussion regarding that? There being none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor King. The Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that this report that the report regarding development charges be received for information. And Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that Schedule B1, Schedule of Townwide Development Charges, attached to the report be approved, and that staff be directed to present development charges bylaw for adoption at the next regular meeting of Council, and that the effective date of August 22nd, 2014 be approved, and that bylaw 3049/2009 be repealed at that time. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The staff recommendation on the DC bylaw as it's been presented to council is certainly supported the recommendation for that from staff stands. However, there was some new information that we received last week with relation to approximately 500 meters of road on Station Street that may or may not need to be, or recommended to be rather, included in the bylaw. We are going to look at the impact on the rate, but we haven't been able to get that information back from the consultant for tonight's meeting. So what we were thinking of doing was simply putting an issue sheet in attached with this matter to give you an understanding of that specific issue. It's a new issue, so whether or not to include or not to include, and that would be one decision, and then council would approve the bylaw based on that decision. So I would request that we defer this until the 22nd, and it could be part of the council meeting, or it could be part of the priorities and policies committee. It's up to council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pat?
I concur with the CAO. Why don't you bring it to the, will you have it ready for council on the 22nd? Is that a fair? Then why don't we do it then, because we've been working on this for quite a while, and then we can approve it right there, council.
Okay, is that's your motion? It could go to committee as well, which would,
Well, you go to committee, you still have to, then you wouldn't bring it back to council in May. I think the,
it's not effective until August, so.
well, either way, doesn't.
Okay, but your
I'm just
motion
trying
is to put it to council?
To bring it to council on April the 22nd for consideration and approval, along
Okay.
with the outstanding issue.
All right, thank you very much. To that, Councillor Pat moves postponement. Anyone to that? Okay, I'm going to call the question on that amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment is carried, and we look forward to that going to April 22nd with all the additional information. Thank you.
So there's no discussion.
Been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley, that the issue summary report entitled the 2014 Consolidated Schedule of User Fees Update be received, and the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the attached consolidated fees, schedule of fees and charges be approved. Discussion. Madam Treasurer, I think there was one charge that wasn't in the consolidated. Can you bring that to council's attention either now or at council?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The aggregate fees, application fees, were not included in the original one that was attached to the agenda. However, it has been corrected to say that it's full cost recovery, and it's included on the agenda tonight. So it'll be the one approved by council.
Okay. Thank you. Anything further on this? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Just wanted to make note or ask through you, Mr. Mayor, the treasurer to speak to the correction of the typo that we discussed earlier. Was that done?
Yes,
Thank you.
it was a simple, in 2013, the cell formulas got changed from a percentage to a decimal place. That has been corrected.
Thank you.
for comparative purposes.
Thank you. Anything else? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that the issue summary report entitled Loan Agreement be received, and the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to enter into a credit agreement with CIBC, and staff be directed to prepare the bylaw for said agreement for consideration at the next regular meeting of Council. Comments, questions? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our treasurer. It's inferred in the documents, but I'd like it for clarity. What are the prepayment terms for the various loans? Are they totally open?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for this loan, it's completely open. It's kind of like a credit line, but done just a little bit differently, like a bridge loan.
Yep.
So if we don't need the money, we don't draw it down. It's just there in case there's cash flow issues.
And the other loans?
The other loans, well, we have a credit line of 3 million. When I tap into it for cash flow issues with respect to capital projects that we're doing, it's paid down as soon as we receive funding that can support it. The loan that we have for the East Fontaine land, there's regular monthly payments that are required. And that's part of our capital, our operating budget, those.
So it's a term loan, if we were to sell part or all of the land that's out there, and we're in a
Councillor,
position.
that's not really the one we're dealing with.
Okay, well, I thought we were trying to talk about the loans, Mr. Mayor, but I guess it's just the bridge loan that you're, okay, I'll withdraw my question.
Okay.
Just thought it'd be interesting information.
Okay.
That's okay.
You can ask it during
I'll
her
talk to the
report. How's
I'll
that
talk to
sound?
the treasurer
You can ask
after.
it during her report, but it's just not pertinent to this particular issue. Going to call the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor King. The issue summary report entitled 2013 Projected Year-End Surplus Recommendation be received. Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the 2013 projected year-end surplus be allocated to the Working Funds Reserve. Discussion, Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm fully in agreement with this policy. I'm just wondering that in the report, it does state that it is not legislated, nor is it our policy to keep a level there. And I'm just wondering if we should direct staff or create a policy that says we need to keep a healthy balance in there and what that healthy balance might be.
Madam Treasurer.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. It certainly can be done. It's very difficult to have a policy to state an exact figure. For instance, last year we used the funding for the library study that was done. So that would, make us below the policy. If we don't have a surplus, where are we getting the funds from to bring that reserve back up to the level that we might choose? So I tend to, what I do when I'm doing the surplus report is identify which reserve is most in need at this time with respect to keeping a balance of around 200 to 250 in there, so.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Others? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, second by Councillor Kersey, that Committee of the Whole receive the March 2014 Corporate Services Monthly Report for information. Now, Councillor Kersey, your question would be germane at this time, but not under that report.
So I can ask it now?
Can ask
Mr.
it.
Mayor? Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Madam Treasurer, could you comment on my question that I put forward wrongly at the other report?
Non-conforming question. Madam Treasurer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In the past, we have on occasion at surplus time put down more funds towards the loan that we have. There's no penalty to do that. We can pay it off at any time.
Thank you.
Lottery tickets? Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Durley?
Not a question,
Comment,
just
sorry.
a comment. I would like to bring attention to another success story in congratulating our tax clerk, Elaine Ronald, for successfully completing the municipal administration program through AMCTO. She's worked hard over 2 years to complete this and has now got the certification and certainly congratulations are in order. Elaine goes the extra mile to always do her job well and always help staff, and I think it deserves recognition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Durley. Certainly, and Ms. Ronald is a long-serving member of our staff, yet continues to increase her training and knowledge and skills and abilities. So thank you for pointing that out. We certainly appreciate her work. Others? Madam Treasurer, I appreciate you putting in the statistics, and there's quite a number there. There's no comparables. I just wondered about your intentions for the future in terms of the statistics. Will you be providing, as some other reports do, sort of year-to-date or comparables through the year or et cetera?
Yes. We had just started doing this at the end of last year, so we had consolidated the year-end results only, not the monthly ones. So as soon as the year wraps around, one time we'll have all the comparative numbers to do, like a January to January and so forth, coming in 2015 for comparative purposes.
Okay.
But we're hoping some of those numbers go down because, you know, we're going to go to EFTs and e-billing and all that stuff, you know.
Well, we look forward to watching that, and perhaps as the year-to-date numbers would be helpful to see the declines on those. So thank you very much. Others? Councillor Pat?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the treasurer. I'm very pleased to see that you're investigating best practices with permissive grants policies, and I'm hoping that, I trust that it'll be done before we start our next budget year, and we'll have time to discuss it so that we can deal with it once and for all on how we're going to approach these grants as time goes on.
Thank you, Councillor. Others? One other item, and I think, Madam Treasurer, you and I had a conversation about it today, about a possible presentation, but under number 13, the water disinfection leak study, the results of the study show that the town is doing a great job of minimizing leaks within our water system. And you propose that there might be a presentation for a representative in coming meeting, is that correct?
Yes, the Stacy Nickel from the consultant that worked on the study with us from Flowmetrics is projected to come here on May 7th, the council meeting?
May 5th.
Sorry, and present to council exactly what that finding means, and doing a good news story. It's really the work that's done in public works as well, in the billing system as well.
Of course.
I have contributed to this, so.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We look forward to it at that time. Anything further from members? There being none, I call the question on receipt for information. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Lane, that the correspondence dated March 24th, 2014 from the Association of Ontario Good Roads Supervisors notifying that Greg Hiltz has received the Ontario Road Supervisor certification be received. Another good news story, as council sees the notes from the correspondence, I received this and I wanted all of council to see it. Great news, Mr. Hiltz, continuing again with his work and the certification. Anything further on that? Continue to have great staff, getting great training, and continue to serve our residents and businesses. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. And similarly, it's been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that correspondence dated March 24th from the Association of Ontario Good Road Supervisor notifying that Ryan Cook has received the Certified Road Supervisor certification be received. Again, the same thing. It's great to see our staff are getting these certifications. Questions, comments? Thank you to staff. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried, and kudos to those two staff members. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, lots of numbers on that one.
Bless you.
It's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that Committee of the Whole receive the March 2014 Public Works and Utilities Report for information. Comments, questions? Councillor Papp?
Quickly, again, want to extend my sincere appreciation to Public Works for, I ran into a couple of the individuals with respect to the traffic management study on Pancake Lane. This is, I'm sure Mr. Manos knows, been ongoing. They're very happy with the progress to date, and they're very satisfied with that, so happy to hear that. Secondly, I'm probably going to get shot for this, but I got to do it anyways. I walk my dog every day past the arena, and I see a sign that was erected for a certain activity that's going on over there. So I'm gonna say this with very constructive, is in all the years, I have never noticed, or maybe there was, if we could possibly put up a sign saying Pelham Arena. There is no signage on our arena. And maybe either I'm walking past the wrong building, I know I'm not. But I just wondered whether, you know, Mr. Mano, that, just in the time while we work towards this new, I just caught me by, when I saw the current sign for the activity that's being taken there, and then I thought, where is the signage that says Pelham Arena? Like a sign on our actual building. So if that could be explored, and you could put up some sort of a sign, both in the front entrance of the building or that, so.
On the new change, the new, whatever, lunchroom.
Not on the lunchroom. Do you know what I'm saying? Is that, am I crazy? Because all those years, I don't think anybody paid, there's never been a sign, unless Councilor Durley, I don't remember a sign being up on that
I seem
building.
to recall there used to be one on the fence in the front.
But I'm saying
is
on
one-
the actual building.
There is one as you
Wouldn't
drive
cost us
in.
that much to put up a sign, would
It's
it?
only on one side.
Be one.
There was one
No,
there?
no.
What happened to it?
Street.
What?
It got moved to the street because they couldn't see it from the road.
No, I understand that.
The road and put it on.
I'll just leave it to staff, I'll give it to staff direction, just, yeah, there's one on the road, but I'm talking about it on the physical building itself. The only reason is because
Is
of.
that
one-
because there is now a sign there?
Well, there's
on
a
the-
sign
on the
up there, and
building?
it's, I'm not objecting to the sign, it's quite there, but in the meantime, you know, you drive by there, how do you know it's the Pelham Arena, unless, I'd like one, 4 feet high across the, no, but I mean, some signage that just says it's the Pelham Arena. And if there was, Mr. Mano, I don't remember it. You could look at that.
Mantle.
There was one at one time.
Could we look at putting one up there?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, that's all I want. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
That wasn't that
Counselor.
hard, was it?
Apparently it was.
Apparently, everybody was dumbfounded. I thought, there must be a sign, or somebody stole the lettering.
Once you go in the gate,
So, Pat,
It's the only building.
Others, Counselor, to other parts of the report, Counselor Rubiak.
Mayor, my question is with regard to Fenwick revitalization. I continue to receive questions about when are we starting, what's going on, and it seems pretty clear that whatever progress we're making isn't being communicated as thoroughly or as effectively as it otherwise might. So I'm just wondering, what's the process that we're using to speak to those who are located on Canberra Road who are going to be affected by this?
Mr. Mantle?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've met regularly with the committee that is part of the revitalization group. Once we have the tenders finalized, which we're expecting any moment now, then we'll be notifying them on the website as to the construction schedule.
Counselor?
Mr. Mayor, I wonder if I might request that notification be somewhat more direct than simply on the website. I know that at least one of those businesses doesn't have access or can't have access, or whatever the issue is about having access to the town website and getting information there. I wonder if we might even go so far as to send maybe a letter or deliver a letter. There aren't
Walk a
that many,
letter around.
or walk a letter around. There aren't that many businesses there, and if we choose to put it on the website or even put it in the newspaper, sure as shooting, it's not going to be read or seen, and we'll continue to get those questions. And I'm really anxious that communication be complete and timely, so that this thing can go as smoothly in perception as it will in reality. As we go
Thank you.
through
The
this.
CEO wants to comment. Mr. CEO.
Just to add to Mr. Mantle's comments, Mr. Mayor, the engineer drawings received the engineering stamp this afternoon. That was the final step. It got delayed. These were supposed to be posted on Friday, actually. They couldn't get the engineer to sign off or stamp it. He did that today. Those documents will be put up for public tender tomorrow. I have directed Mr. Mantle to keep the public in the loop, if you will, and we'll use all methods possible to do that, including the suggestions of the council.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Counselor?
I very much appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I received a phone call late last week from a concerned resident regarding tree branches that had come down on town trees. Apparently, and this is in the Oak Court area, apparently we did send in a chipper and something to clean up some branches, and this particular property was missed because of snow cover and so on and so forth, and just wondering if, some kind of, what is the policy, and is there an arrangement that, that all residents in areas such as this can be serviced?
Mr. Mantle?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, staff have been driving about town with the wood chipper, chipping up brush. They've gone down streets a couple of times now, and I think we've been almost everywhere now. So probably the next step would be that they should bundle them up and place them out for pickup as part of the regional collection.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add to that, I would also encourage the resident to fill out a public service request so that we knew specifically where the location was and what the problem was, so we can respond.
Okay, perhaps I can do that for this person because she doesn't have access to it, so, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor Papp?
Just quickly, I just want to thank staff and all those involved. I ran into members of the family, the Winicki family, and I want to thank you. They were touched and moved by how we dealt with them, and I hope that next year we're going to work with them to build that type tournament in memory of their late son. And I want to thank you that your compassion went a long way towards helping them. So I just want to gratefully acknowledge that to all of you.
Thank you, Councillor Papp.
Secondly, I know this has always come up from time to time, but it's just a small thing, but through you to Mr. Mantle. Mr. Mantle, I just was amazed, C.R.L. Campbell Construction with their low bid and the budget we set. I just always scratch my head. It's almost like a $275,000 difference of what was allocated and what they bid. But apparently they're going to be able to meet all those requirements, right?
They will, yes.
We can put that towards the sign at the arena.
Would you want it on me?
Thank you.
I wanted a mine gold. Okay, thanks.
Comments as well. Others? Mr. Mantle, the culvert failure, or a culvert washout, I guess, is what we're terming it. Can you give us an update? Your report's a little old. How close are we to getting that completely done?
The plan was to start tomorrow, but with the rain, they'll probably get put back. It'll just be too much water running through the ditch or the creek. The pipe's ordered and available. It's ready to go.
Okay, thank you. In terms of that particular culvert, we learned through the process that it was actually the one that was, or among those that were budgeted and to be done this year. It just causes members of the public to say, what are our culverts like? What are the assessment of them, et cetera. So obviously we assessed the culvert last year, determined that or recently determined that it needed to be done and included in the budget, approved the budget, et cetera. I think it'd be interesting, and I don't know if colleagues agree, to get more information on culverts. What are the next culverts, or how often they're looked at? Maybe you can give us an update now. How often do we look at our culverts and bridges? Assure the public that we do take care of our infrastructure. Mr. Mantle?
The large bridges and structures, concrete ones, the large multi-plate steel ones, they're inspected every other year. That's provincial legislation. Smaller diameter ones, such as the one that failed on Chandler Road, they're inspected regularly by staff, whether it's annual sort of a process, primarily the large ones. Culverts rust out from time to time. That culvert probably dates from the early 70s, so we probably got our money's worth out of it. And as you mentioned, it had been identified as part of our inspection process to replace it this year. So there's a regular inspection process. There's a couple of our staff who are just identified or designated as certified road supervisors, so they certainly have the qualifications to identify failures or impending failures.
Okay, and you'll let council know, should there be some requirement to maybe use some of the funds that we don't spend them all on the arena sign, that we might spend them on, invest them in other infrastructure that may require it?
Will do.
Thank you, Mr. Merrill. Councillor Lane, to this issue?
Yes, that.
Go ahead, sir.
Through you, Mayor, that was a very good publicity that we got through Hamilton, Toronto, and whatever with that culvert failure, so that brought people to know where Pelham is, so that's a lemonade at the end of the tunnel.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Anything else? Oh, I had another question. If other councillors don't. The pedestrian crossing, the pedestrian crosswalk, I had a question from a member of the community. Do we automatically go to the region for that? I was reminded, for instance, when the pedestrian signal was put in on Hayes Street, that the contractor did that, and that was part of their contract, and they bid it out and got a price, and somebody did it. In terms of this, or at least that's what I was informed, in terms of this particular issue, we just go to the region, or do we not, can we not tender it out for others to bid on? Mr. Mantle, can you comment, please?
The region installed that, the signals on Hay Street also. The only work that was done by our general contractor there was the underground ductwork. Everything else was installed by the region. That ensures that there's a uniform materials used, the controllers and that sort of thing, so that it's they can pull it more or less off the shelf when there's a failure or a repair needed as part of the ongoing maintenance of them. So we've been using the region for all of our signals. They do all the maintenance on them. If they install them, then they usually have the parts to repair them when they fail.
Okay, so they'll be doing the one at the corner of Regional Road 20 and Hayes Street, for instance?
Yes, well, that's a regional signal anyways.
Okay.
But the other three on Pelham Street, the pedestrian crosswalks,
Yes.
will all be regional installations.
Okay, thank you. We look forward to that being done in May, on May 12th, as it says here.
Cross our fingers.
Crossing our fingers. And then I guess the final thing on that is that there were a number of suggestions with that, and they were a bit on hold until these pedestrian signals came in. Line painting on the sides of the road, Councilor Durley might remind me of the other initiatives to be taken. So will those follow suit, Mr. Mantle?
The pavement marking will be done as part of our late summer, early fall painting. We typically wait till the hotter weather's by us so that the paint marks don't become blacked out by the soft asphalt, hot asphalt.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councilor Lane.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under the fire station, is that scheduled April 17th? Is that?
I think that's just a future report, is it not? We're dealing with Public Works.
Under Public Works, under Fire Station 3, groundbreaking ceremony.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For April 17th?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Is that right, or is that wrong?
Ceremony out there without me?
For everybody else?
It is in the report. It is scheduled for April 17th at 4 p.m., I believe.
Yep.
Chief, do you want to just comment on what's being proposed?
Yes, this Thursday, the 17th, 4 o'clock at the site, the future site. Press, we're hoping there's a good turnout of firefighters, and we're inviting as many people to come, so bring your boots and
The snow shovel?
boots.
Okay, thank you. Well, maybe as the plans firm up, we'll communicate via email to members of council about it.
Just the one thing, I know I'm gonna anticipate a problem here, if there's a bunch of people coming, if you could carpool, because there is no parking whatsoever out there.
Thank you, Chief. Anything further? There being none, I'm going to call the question on receipt of the information. We thank Mr. Mantle for his answers and others. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item has been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley. Committee of the Whole receive the March 2014 Community Planning and Development Services Report for information. Questions, comments? Many activities. Mr. Glover, I do have one item And that is regarding the statistics. It's interesting to see the statistics. And as we say that we'd like to roll out the red carpet, and it is a red carpet, so it is a great treatment for a great product. One of the things that I think about is the turnaround time for things like building permits or applications. When, as you'll note from my report at council, when a few councillors and I were at the opening of the recent housing development, the developer told us that they were very pleased. The moment that they took over the property to the stage that it passed draft plan subdivision at council, it was 8.5 months. And I said, how is that? And they said, that's good. Anything between 6 and 9 months is very good. And they were quite pleased, especially given the changes that were occurring in our planning department. So kudos to staff for that. But it caused me to think about the turnaround times and if we can monitor those. So I know, for instance, that we have to have a certain time for building permits, whether it's 10 days or 20 days, depending on the type of permit. And those are legislated. But can we get it better? So can those be types of things that we can see in future reports, Mr. Glover?
The quick answer is yes. The building permits are legislated, as well as the plan applications are legislated in terms of the timeframes. And if we don't meet those timeframes, they're in appeal period, or appealability anyways by the applicants. Through building permit, we've had a discussion, me and you, earlier last week, I think. You brought it to our attention that what you're discussing here now. So I took it amongst myself to ask the chief building official if he could start to track the building permits as to when they come in. Currently, it'd be a manual process. We have a software system that's being implemented by the building department, and once that's implemented, hopefully next month, we can electronically track it. So it'll be a very simple process, and we can put it in their monthly reports. Until that point, we'll do it manually, and hopefully we'll have something for next report for you.
Okay, thank you very much. We look forward to that and seeing how we improve and get better. So thank you for that. Anything else on planning and development? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, very short question. Could you outline the timelines for the rollout of the new zoning bylaw, when council would be starting to receive some reports? And
I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. We're currently reviewing that with the consultant. We don't expect, because we're focusing on the Font Hill applications at hand, it's almost a domino. We probably won't be discussing the comprehensive zoning bylaw in a draft form until sometime in October, I believe, November perhaps. We have a first draft. Staff would look at it to comment on it. Any revisions go back. So it'd be around the fall timeframe that we'd be bringing it to council to look at, or the public.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that update. We look forward to more information on that. Anything further on the Planning and Development Services report? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Rivak, seconded by Councillor King. The Committee of the Whole received the March 2014 Fire and Bylaw Services report for information. Discussion? Councillor Papp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just quickly to Vicky. I was fascinated by the list of vendors for the Pelham Farmers Market. And I'm just curious, and maybe, I don't know if you can answer.
Councillor, I think we're on the fire.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Apologies.
Sorry.
We'll go to you first on the next report.
I'm still thinking about the arena. Getting sidelined, okay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our chief. You mentioned in your report, Chief, that there's a growing number of sea containers popping up around the community. And yet you don't allude to the fact that you might be bringing forward a policy or recommendation and how we deal with them. Is that in the cards, or how do you propose that this move forward?
Chief, Mr. Mayor, the reason why I put the issue up is that we're going to be looking for some direction. So currently, right now, there's a lot of sea cans in the town. The town itself has 3 of them. The zoning, if you look at the zoning bylaw, the prohibited structures or vessels or whatever, it doesn't clearly define sea cans. It talks about abandoned rail cars and trailers and stuff like that, but a sea can isn't defined. And then there's been some municipalities that have challenged the process, and the building commission has deemed, in some municipalities, the building commission has deemed them buildings, so they require building permits to have them on their property. Until you start really thinking about it, when you start driving around town looking for them, you'll be amazed at how many are in the town. And so we have them existing, so where do we wanna go? Do we want to address them in the zoning and prohibit them? And then we're gonna have to clean them all up, or if we go on the building side and deem them as buildings, and then they'd be required to, on the larger ones, they'd be required to apply for a building permit. Anything over 107 square feet, so the 40 footers, the little guys wouldn't be, but so, I just anticipating this really could get ugly with what's existing, so.
Okay, thank you, Council.
So, Mr. Mayor, with that, I think council doesn't have enough information to really give some solid direction to staff, other than to say perhaps we need a preliminary report outlining the options that the chief has alluded to, and what the options are to the town for, as far as dealing with them. So I'd like to make that direction.
Okay. Chief, can you, maybe the start of a creative problem-solving process? What are the facts? What are the issues? What are the possible solutions to the, what is the problem? I think is the issue. Chief?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The problem, what really kind of brought this up is we have a property out on Weber Road where the gentleman is going through the process of rezoning his property, and his neighbor has gone through the same process, so they've spent the dollars and they've done, and they're using these sea containers as storage. But we're not forcing anybody else to do this stuff, so these people could start coming back into us and saying, well, if I'm doing it, how come he's not doing it? So that's where I'm kind of going with this thing.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pat,
No,
to that issue?
Yes. Councilor Ribbiak was before me.
I'm sorry, Councillor Ribbiak.
Mr. Mayor, typically, I guess bylaws aren't retroactive. Could we pass a bylaw that would actually clean up the current situation, or are we just preventing new ones?
Mr. CEO?
Mr. Mayor, I think that, just speak in addition to what the chief has said, is that the intent of putting it on the report was simply to bring it to council's attention. I think that's been successful. We would like the opportunity to be able to come back with additional information at this point. We just wanted to make sure that it was an issue that council felt was appropriate that we pursue and that we start to look at remedy.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Papp, anything further on that?
No, just to say that for some of us who have been here, there is a very delicate, sensitive issue regarding all of this, those sea containers and what's stored, what's not stored, how they're defined, and I'll just leave it at that. I think I'll leave it to staff's capable hands of bringing them back. We need to be very clear on this. You're right. We've set some precedents that were not, I'm going to say, conducive to our benefit or for the owners, and then the other side, we don't have any clear cuts, so between the planning yourselves, come back with clear cut prerequisites of what these can be used for or not used for.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like the CEO has indicated that that will be happening. Anything further on planning? Sorry, on fire and bylaw? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. The next item has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King. Committee of the Whole received the March 2014 Recreation, Culture, and Wellness Department report for information. Councillor Papp.
Well, now I finally get my turn. Just quickly, I looked through the list of vendors, and I was curious, and I don't know if you can answer this, but I saw that one of the ones that wasn't accepted, through you, Mr. Mayor, was a winery that applied. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't there legislation currently before Queen's Park to allow farmers markets to sell wine? Because I think, I hear in Welland, they're going to be actually a couple of wineries are opening up, if they haven't already, and actually be selling their wares. So I'm just curious.
Ms. Van Ravensway?
True, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that is true. The farmer's market at this time, They didn't have space
Right,
available.
okay.
And secondly, they weren't comfortable in dealing with it this year, but they would look into it next year.
Great, I'll be interested to see what happens to our neighbors, because they've got a couple set up, but I mean,
Yeah.
what the market, how people will respond to the sale of that in the open market. But I know you're right, Mr. Mayor, it is being allowed. I know you can do it. All right, I'd be curious.
Okay, thank
Can
you.
I get the food vendors out of there?
Anything further to that, Counselor Durley, on that particular report?
Not to
No?
that issue, but.
Okay, go ahead. Any others? No, go ahead.
Just again, celebrating successes, I'd like to draw attention to two members of staff that are going through professional development, and Jessica Riddell attended the full conference of Parks and Recs Ontario, and Julie Cook took a course in managing conflict and opportunity for growth, and also took part in the conference. I had a chance to, Councilor Kersey and I attended Parks and Rec last year in Niagara Falls, and there certainly is a lot of information that is very good to bring back to staff in there, and I'm sure the staff will bring it back, and it'll make your department a much better place again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Counselor Lane.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is maybe not the place, but maybe it is. It's in reference to the Isaac Riel Memorial Skate Park. And I guess I have a couple comments and then a concern. One is, as I like to see the usage, it seems to be very well utilized during the day and what have you, but I really have some concerns with the number of young people that I see there without helmets, be it bicycles or be it skateboards or be it what. And I guess my concern is at the end of the day, if someone is to get seriously hurt in the skateboard park, is in fact the town liable, even though we maybe have posted it that we're not?
Ms. Van Ravensway, can you comment, please?
The rules and regulations as posted were reviewed by our insurer, and they are the rules and regulations that were recommended by them. It is not a supervised facility, and the warnings are there, and that is their recommendation, the way it's operating.
Counselor?
That's what it is, that's what it is, that's fine. I just would hate to see somebody get seriously hurt, and I know there's a lot of action, and I can't understand why these kids are there with no helmets, and probably, maybe or maybe not, the parents are aware of it, but it's an accident waiting to happen, in my opinion, and I don't know what we can do about it.
I thought it was a requirement of usage. Ms. Van Ravensway?
It is recommended that they wear helmets, although it is not supervised. We do not have someone there policing it as staff.
Okay. I just wonder if it's something that we may want to consider. Maybe it's something that staff can look into and get back to council on. Not necessarily all the time, but periodically, some of the time. Or that the youth themselves. That was when we received, I know it was a different group that presented to us, and it was prior to Isaac's passing. But there was a group of youth that were willing to self-supervise. I guess that hasn't been followed up. That's a good issue that you raised, Councillor Lane. Councillor Durley wants to comment as well.
That was my point exactly. I know in the presentation it was made by our youth that they had a plan under which they could police themselves in that, and I think if we perhaps suggested that they could organize this, that would be it. Again, the legal joint and several and all those good things that could make us liable for something are certainly out there. However, the supervision part of it has been looked at by the insurance company, and in fact, we have done due diligence in that. So, the folks that are using it should take an active part in ensuring their own safety as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So perhaps it's something that Ms. Van Ravensway, you can work on and report back to council with some recommended solutions. Thank you. Anything further? Thank you for raising it, Councillor. Anything further? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried to receive that report. And we do look forward to the grand opening of the skate park on the 31st of May. The next item has been postponed, so the next item has been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey. The Committee of the Whole received the issue summary report Downtown Master Plan, Fenwick and Font Hill, and that staff be directed to conduct a public open house to solicit feedback from the community and report back with results. Just to comment on this, it was late in getting on the agenda for the meeting last week, but it is here, has been printed out. I presume it's available in some form or another on the town's website. I'll open up any discussion to the motion, if there is any. So we look forward to public feedback. Mr. CEO, maybe you just want to just comment on that, on the actual report.
Well, not much to comment that isn't covered in the written documents, other than this has been an evolution from urban design guidelines to a full-fledged downtown master plan. It includes Font Hill, East Font Hill as one solid downtown, obviously the downtown of Fenwick. The idea is to get this document out to the public for feedback and ultimately for acceptance by council within a you know, I don't want to say we want to rush it, but within a most effective timeline as possible, so that these can come into effect as we start to look more specifically at new developments in the community, especially the things like the Fenwick secondary plan and also the East Font Hill design guidelines for our project there. So,
okay, thank you. So we look forward to that feedback. Councillor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just curious to know, when we're talking about a public open house, I take it we mean just one. And I'm just wondering what the details of that might be. Would it be located in a place where no one in Fenwick can say, we didn't have a chance to get there? Please?
I'm not sure I understand the question completely, but the open house itself would be storyboards and illustrations and those sorts of things. The planning partnership, along with our staff, would be present to answer questions and get feedback from the public. Location and date have not been determined, but you know, we can consider that.
Please.
Okay. Thank you. Anything further? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried, and we look forward to that occurring in a timely way. Thank you. And look forward to the feedback from the community. The next item is the clerk's monthly report. It's been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Kersey. The Committee of the Whole received the March 2014 Clerk's Department report for information. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for your ongoing work. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, success story. It seems like the total clerk's department is taking part in professional development. Our clerk herself is a mentor in the municipal leadership training at Brock University, of course, which Jordan Mamalidi, deputy clerk, is enrolled in. Jordan has also completed the intermediate level parliamentary procedures through CTO, and Diane Bell is enrolled in Microsoft Office and also taking a workshop on dealing with difficult people. And this is another fine example of our dedicated staff of doing their best to update their qualifications and their experience and their certifications in order to serve the public very much better. And kudos to the full clerical staff for all of these efforts.
Thank you very much, Council, for highlighting that on behalf of Council. Thank you. Any further comments, questions on the clerk's report? Kudos to those staff, and I call the question, although, oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Lane.
Well, it is just a comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it was on the first page under municipal election. I find it interesting or puzzling, if you will, that the Niagara School Board would not open up their schools for polling stations. I would just think that would be something that the educational system may pick up on as being something that might be beneficial, the democratic process and what have you, where people all over the world are struggling in order to vote. And here the school board is teaching their students, however, you might see it as not being a part of that process. So I'm just amazed at that.
Thank
That's a
you.
comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that just the one school board? Is there opportunity to use the other board?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it is just the one school board. However, as an update to council, a letter from the Minister of Education was released to all school boards in the province, underscoring the legislation that says that they must provide school properties for the use of the municipal election, because the municipal election also takes care of their school board trustees. So that letter was sent to the DSBN and all school boards. So I'm quite certain we'll be able to be successful in using them for polling place now.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you. Thanks for raising it. Anything further?
Quickly, I get action.
Right to the minister, Councillor. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Lane, that Committee of the Whole received the March 2014 Chief Administrative Officer's Report for information. This includes the East Fonthill update. Comments, questions? Councillor Papp?
Through you to you, Mr. CAO, I guess I'm a little puzzled when item 17, physician recruitment, I could have sworn, I can't swear, that we had some type of protocol with respect to physician recruitment, and maybe I'm wrong, where we did actually have a package. We did, in fact, I know we did, we offered cash incentives, all the rest. Now, is that no longer the case, or what you're suggesting we need to revisit that?
Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only documents the town has with regards to physician recruitment is the bylaw. My understanding was that back when it was created, the intent was to provide a cash bonus or benefit to the doctor as a person, as opposed to funding equipment or bricks and mortar and those sorts of things. As we have had some increased activity with regards to physician services in the community, we were doing some research and realized that we're quite scoped, if you will, on what we can and can't do as far as physician recruitment. We further discovered that we had no actual policy on it. That gave us the mandate to be able to do a number of things and be flexible with it. So we're currently doing some research. We expect to have a policy back to council fairly quickly so that we can get your direction on the flexibility and then move forward with some potential discussions regarding physician recruitment.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I expect. That's what I was reading in between. We need to expand the parameters of how we go about doing this, particularly in light of the fact that there's consideration for some investment in physical, clinical equipment. Some municipalities have actually done that. They've paid for equipment, they've paid for, but I think that's very worthwhile, and I'm glad you're doing that, and the sooner the better, because we're expanding very quickly all those clinical health services in our area.
Thank you. Anyone else to the physician recruitment piece? Okay, thank you. Councillor Papp, did you have another item?
Well, I just, again, I can't tell you, I'm sure all of you, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the voicemail, the response has been overwhelming in the community for Wellspring. There isn't anybody that I don't run into that are just thoroughly pleased, stunned, and just so happy that this has happened here. And I did meet Ms. Mantini over the weekend. We were at a couple of events, and they've been bombarded. There hasn't been any negativity, and people all across the Niagara region are just ecstatic that we've embraced this. And I think it just sets in motion a whole, and this includes realtors and all kinds of other individuals who have now seen us as becoming that we're living up to our vision and our mission, and people are going to be attracted to this community for a variety of reasons, and I couldn't have thought of a better way of doing it with Wellspring. So I just wanted to share that with you, and including some of the medical group that I've ran into before with the local hospital here in Welland. They're blown away. I think this is incredible.
Thank you, Councillor.
Great.
Feedback. Others
You too as well.
to that? Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I've received positive feedback, and as you did say, Ms. Mantini was over the moon with the feedback that they've
Oh, yeah.
received, and so that's great news. And the CEO and I were discussing the next phase, which is the agreement, and that will take some time, I think, to hammer out. Mr. CEO, do you just want to comment on next steps briefly?
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, the Wellspring, more than likely a member of their board, will be part of our working group so that they're plugged into the planning process of East Swan Hill. And we will be commencing to put together a lease agreement. We've got some time on that, so it's not urgent, but it's something that will receive full attention and priority.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anything else, other items in the CEO's report? Councillor Percy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions and a comment. First question pertains to item number 5, Peace Park. I wonder if the CAO could bring us up to date on what's happening there.
Mr. CEO.
I'd like to thank the councillor for pointing that out, actually. We've had, as you're aware, some difficulty with Peace Park. My report indicates that there was a mandatory site visit for April 3rd that was scheduled for all of the registered bidders. Obviously, that has now taken place. We had a number of concerns internally, and there was a number of concerns from the construction landscape community that the tender documents weren't accurate enough to provide decent quotes. And we, through the course of our meeting, made a couple of determinations. One, we think part of the problem is that this project is sort of a one part construction that involves engineering, and one part landscaping, which doesn't involve the engineering. And landscape companies are trying to bid, but they're having a lot of difficulty trying to sort out the costing on a lot of the engineered requirements: lighting, electrical, irrigation systems, tying into storm, building retaining walls that require engineered drawings. So they're going out and having to pay out of pocket for people to help them put that bid together, of which they're coming back to us and saying, well, we don't have enough information, because if I pay out of pocket and I don't get the bid, then I'm out of that money. So we understood what they were saying. The second part was, now the timeline the window is closing on the timeline for construction before the band shell starts up, and we're very aware of that. So what we've done, our original plan was to go ahead with the amphitheater seating portion and do the bulk of the amphitheater band shell work prior to the band shell starting. I believe it's June 19th. And have that done and wrapped up. We're not going to be able to meet that timeline with confidence, so rather than take a risk, we're going to do the second phase first, which is essentially the brickwork around our building, and there's some modest planting. We're going to put conduit in for the irrigation and electrical, and we're going to call it a day for the spring, and that will have no impact on band shell, farmers market, etc. Then we're also splitting the tender into two. So the tender that will go out hopefully tomorrow morning is regards to phase 1, which is largely brickwork and planting, which is pretty much a landscaping exercise. We're then going to put out a second tender for the larger band shell project, which has more of the structural engineering involved in it and electrical engineering and so on. That will also give contractors more time to get together the necessary information. That work will, and then we can award, and that work can be commenced, I believe, September 6th, the 5th being the last band shell of the year, and we can try and complete as much as possible. The intent is to get the cenotaph done so that we can hold Remembrance Day services there, and any other outstanding work that we can't get done prior to the weather going for winter will resume in the spring, and that will avoid any disruption to summer activities.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor, on that item?
No, nothing further on that.
Okay, any questions, comments from members of council? So we look forward to that tender coming to us, because I think we circled as part of the budget process that item. And I do just want to add a comment and kudos. I'm going to actually name the individual. The CEO and I had a meeting today with Mr. Langendoon, who has extensive knowledge of shrubbery and trees and those types of items. And I was thinking about you, Councillor Kersey, because of your comment maybe a bit ago, but the idea of volunteers coming forward with expertise to assist the town. That's exactly what Mr. Langendoon did today. He went through in a very comprehensive way the plantings, was making different recommendations. Some of the trees I think that are in the proposed tender, the first tender, were, you know, nut trees and stuff, and other trees that might have items, bark, et cetera, that won't fall from the tree and all of that, that might cause an operational, you know, problems. We'll have operational staff, public works staff would have to clean it up, et cetera. He says you can use that, or you can use this tree here that looks very similar, and et cetera. So, you know, there's lots of goodwill on this. We also met with Ms. Van Ravensway with the members of the Ban Shell Committee. The CAO explained the schedule. They were very, very pleased with the schedule, especially because the time is short. And they are then suggesting that tiered seating would be there for not their 9th season, but for their 10th season. So we look forward to the actual results on that. Anything further on the Peace Park? Okay, Councillor Kirsch, you had a second item?
Number 19, Dog Park. Again, I keep harping on the same theme, but it appears to me.
Barking or harping?
Yeah, barking. Up the same. I just wonder about our involvement. How much are we involved in all of this? You know, it indicates that, you know, the tenders were released to the market. We had a mandatory site meeting. We had 10 companies attend, all of this sort of thing. Who is actually managing the project? Is it the region, or are we managing the project?
I think we're cut and paste. Mr. CEO?
I cut and paste that from an email I
Okay.
received from the region. It's all region all the
Okay,
time.
all right. Makes me feel comfortable. Thank you.
Okay.
Just have to ask the question. And the last is a comment, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
We had 10 companies attend.
Oh, I missed
And
that.
it's with respect to the East Fawn Hill project update and the timelines that are outlined there. And those timelines are aggressive. And I guess I'm looking for a comment from planning as well as our CAO with respect to how we're going to approach private enterprise when they bring forward a project. And, I mean, part of this project is private, but part of it's municipal. Are we going to set targets such as we have here? So when you have your meeting and you sit down with the proponent, you're going to outline a plan of attack and target dates that we're going to work to so that they have a clear understanding of the targets, the staff has a clear understanding, and everybody is on the same page. So, and we should take an aggressive approach to it, much like we have on this one. So I'd just like to hear from both planning and our CAO on how we're going to approach this.
Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To answer the question, the timeline is aggressive, purposely so. First, to keep the project with the foot on the gas. I think it's important. Second of all, there are some items in the timeline that will trigger a public mandatory process, which also comes with the possibility of appeal. We're sensitive to that. If we wait, there's a couple of dynamics at play. If we were to wait until the fall to do some of the planning that normally you wouldn't do over the summer, you kind of take a break, you come back in the fall. Well, the deadline for all of that is September 15th, because council will then become lame duck. And then we're into November until the new, council's up and running. And if if council makes a decision in November and then we're appealed on something, we're well into the next year, and our timeline is a year behind off the bat. So we want to make sure that we push to try and to do this. I'm happy to announce that we're already behind schedule on the first item.
That's great.
Okay, then.
So we're off to a great start. The application for draft plan subdivision was supposed to be in Friday. It will be here tomorrow. But 2 days on a draft plan subdivision is complicated. I think it was pretty good. So the other thing is, I'll try and answer your question. I'm not sure if I really understand it entirely, but with relation to the town-owned lands, if there is an unsolicited bid from a private developer to do something on our land, it would be treated as such, and it would be as dealt with by council on an individual basis. Anyone looking to develop either on our land or the Allen Group land, I mean, this is the process we're following. So,
I think the counselor was, and maybe you could speak to it, but I think the counselor was saying we have a very quick process here, a very aggressive process. What about other developments? I don't think you mentioned in East Fon Hill, but just other developments in general.
Right, so.
other developments, yeah, of course, we're trying to turn these around as quickly as possible. I mean, draft plan applications, we, prior to Mr. Glover coming on board, we put a few through. I'm very pleased with the one that the mayor mentioned earlier. We worked hard to get that through. We were short-staffed. We did it in a reasonable amount of time. That was for sort of a first kick at it, but the expertise that Mr. Glover brings to the table, I'm absolutely confident that the red tape will be rolled out, and the red carpet will be rolled out, and the red tape will be rolled up, and that we'll be expediting all these types of projects as quickly and aggressively as we can.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Glover, just to that, there's a pre-consultation meeting. Are timelines identified in that meeting? And maybe you could, if they are, just talk about it, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as the CAO indicated, we are aggressive in terms of our timing. The pre-consultation lays out any difficulties or additional studies or information that we need to process the application. The application, as I said earlier, there's a mandated timeframe from the Planning Act to process these, otherwise they go into appeal ability. We push applications through as quickly and as effectively as possible. The delays come when we're missing information or when something's not accurate or complete. And when that occurs, we contact the applicant to complete that process or complete that information so that we can continue assessing or coming to public meetings, open houses, etc. So we are doing everything we can, and we will continue to do everything we can to advance these applications as they come in.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. Counselor?
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the East Fon Hill update? Anyone else on any other items in the CAO's report? The CAO often pulls items that maybe I should have asked a question in another report, but I'm going to ask it here because you identify it. Number 14, Kunda Park. That's in an area in the Merritt Road, South Pelham area. And I was told, although I drove by and didn't see them today, but I was told on the weekend by some residents in that area that there were some recent signs that have gone up in that area from the Ministry of Natural Resources and some packages that went to people's homes. Do we have any update on that, or will you keep us updated on that?
I have no information on that at all, Mr. Mayor, but we'll be looking into that and getting back to you as soon as we can.
Thank you. Look forward to it. Anything further? There be none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And it's been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Kersey. This regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Tuesday, April 22nd. That's because of the holiday, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thanks so much to staff for those reports and giving us updates. We appreciate it. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Had a toad and all like wacky.
Go on, we're on a roll.
All right, to the next.